Hello, Internet, and welcome back to Antiheroes Anonymous, or welcome for the first time if it's your very first time joining us. I'm Ethan, and I'm the Dungeon Master for this 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons show! And as you can see, we get very excited here about our Dungeons & Dragons. I've got 4 wonderful players, one of whom is a Skype robot today. Would you guys mind introducing yourselves?
I'm Nick. I play Thaddeus, the human vengeance paladin.
I'm Kay. I play Harmony, who is a tiefling wild magic sorcerer.
I'm Melissa, and I play Mara, and she is a human rogue parrot.
I play Hunter, who's a Warforged Fighter Ranger.
You're who?
Can you not hear me?
It cut out.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'll try again. I'm Zach. I play Hunter, who's a Warforged Fighter Ranger.
Let's do that.
I play Hunter.
Just plain
No, it's
robot.
my laptop. My laptop's working real hard, y'all.
So a couple quick announcements, and then we'll get into a recap, and then get right into the game. We stream on Twitch every Monday at 7 p.m. Pacific time, and then post our episodes to YouTube the following Wednesday. Throughout the show, we use a variety of custom items, as well as a custom wild magic table for our resident wild magic sorcerer. Our music comes from BattleBards, TabletopAudio, and Incompetech, and our character portraits, which you can see on the info cards in the right, come from an artist named Carrie Peach, who goes by @CarrieDraws on Twitter. Then if you're watching us on Twitch, you can check the channel page for links and info to everything I just mentioned and more. And if you're watching us on YouTube, you can check the video description for a similar amount of information. Other than that, you can go ahead and follow us on Twitter @AntiheroesAnon to get news and updates about what we're doing and when. And then other than that, we just hope you enjoy the show, and we'll get straight into a recap and then right into play. So the party went with their friends Dawn and Eli to the city of Ravenmore in order to save their friend Mandus from the vampire Alkene. There, they protected some refugees and found a memory from the Raven King, and also fought against the Medusa Queen Ixlati and the Shadow Dragon Chitus. Kuor, a nemesis of the parties, and particularly of Thaddeus's, managed to take over Ravenmore and capture their friend Dawn, who was at the time working on escaping with the refugees. The party then entered the Shadowfell, where they managed to have a decisive confrontation with Ixlati and slay her, as well as her dragon, Chitus. And then they made their way to Alkene's castle, where they were welcomed inside, unharmed, and sat down for a creepy and short-lived dinner, where they ate and drank nothing.
Of course not. You're gonna walk in your enemy's house and then dine with them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bad idea. But
Especially when everything's already dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
I don't know
not
whether the
fresh
suspense is better or not, but I'm just going to go on the record and say none of it was poisoned. Your caution's warranted, but it wasn't poisoned. Anyways.
That would have been boring.
The vampire servant Dimitri then led them around the castle, and they managed to convince him to allow them access to the tower, where they had learned a dark mirror was at the very pinnacle, and they managed to free Mandus from being trapped in said mirror, after which an enraged Alkene arrived at the top of the tower to kill them. Through the party's combined efforts, the vampire was at last vanquished, with Harmony's legendary words being something like "peekaboo, motherfucker." I can't remember.
I can't believe you repeated that.
It was wonderful, and he died in a bolt of radiance. And so that is exactly where we pick up with the group of you at the top of the tower. Mandus managing to have pushed himself to the side to get out of the confrontation, and now is just sort of like lying there nursing his wounds. And yeah, with that, I will turn things over to you. What would you guys like to do?
Gosh.
I want to search Alkene's body, make sure he's, like, dead.
I'm not sure anything's left.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know that. I don't know much about vampires, so...
I mean, I feel like my beam pretty much vaporized him.
It's true.
I think that was the final descriptor, right?
Yeah, as you go to investigate Alkene's body, you find that essentially nothing is left but a pile of ash that adorns the floor several feet below where he was hovering at this, near the top of the ceiling in that tower. So there's nothing but a pile of ash where he once stood.
So I think I'll like step on it with my foot and kind of push the pile and be like, yeah, he's not coming back. And then I'll join the party, the rest of everyone upstairs, to meet with Mandus. Make sure he's okay.
I'm gonna ask Mandus if he knows of a way to destroy or otherwise seal this mirror.
Yeah, and so you all kind of gather around Mandus, and Thaddeus, as you ask that question, he looks weakly up into your eyes and says, "No, I don't know. I'm sure there is magic that is powerful enough to do it, but I don't have it in my power. This is an incredibly ancient and powerful magic. I don't know. If you have some power of your own that you think could end it, you're welcome to try, but I just don't know."
For now,
Perhaps.
could we like disguise it, build something over it, maybe make it look like part of the tower?
I think I don't think Thaddeus doesn't consider himself to have powerful magic at that level. But he is going to take out the bell one last time and stand in front of Chuck and ring it.
Okay. Let me just roll some dice real quick.
Uh-oh. That's never a thing you want your team to say.
Yeah.
Okay. You stand in front of the dark surface, this almost mirror-like surface that rotates in the center of the tower, emanating the black and purple energy, and ring the bell. And the noise echoes out for the area immediately around you, but then is immediately drowned by the wind and thunder that rumbles around the tower, and nothing seems to happen.
Okay. Well, if the Raven Queen, if this small, slight artifact of the Raven Queen isn't going to do anything, I can't.
Maybe there's something in Alkine's castle that could provide some insight to this thing. We wanted to walk around for a moment.
Well, it's also something that, we can research and come back and address later.
Yeah, Mandus kind of struggles to his feet, sort of extending a hand for anyone who will help him up.
I'll help him, and I'll cast Cure Wounds.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the light energy from your hands pours into him, and you can see he gains a little bit of vitality, but he still looks incredibly weak, and he still has sort of like bulging purple veins in his neck and things like that that show the trauma of what he experienced on the other side of the mirror. But as he stands, he says, I think Hunter makes a good point in that the main threat of the Shadowfell was Alkine, and he was using this to draw undead through from another place, so it would be good if we could deal with this in the future, but with Alkine gone, for the time, things should be, they should calm down somewhat.
Alkine is specifically what the Raven Queen told me to deal with here, so my mission's over. Six HP for next.
I just hope that killing him was able to get rid of the Shadowfell's influence in Ravenmore itself.
That's a good point.
And when you say that, Mandus turns to you, Harmony, and says, that's right, I have been meaning to ask. I don't know what became of Ravenmore after I left, but it was in a dire state when I got back here. How are things out there?
Not great.
And not better.
The Yuan-Ti had pretty much taken control of everything by the time we got there. They were starting to build the pyramid. A lot of people died.
Now you can see his face falls at that. He sort of mutters something under his breath, and those of you who are closest can hear that it's basically just a lamentation that he wasn't able to spare those people. But he then looks back up and says, well, the people of Ravenmore have a long history of suffering under the oppression of tyrants and bouncing back from it nonetheless. So I'm sure they'll rebuild.
King of tyrants, Orin is still out there, right?
Not
Or,
Orin,
Orin,
but
yeah, Orin's people, though, outside of Ravenmore, or inside of Ravenmore.
Amanda says, Sorry, what?
Yes,
Yeah.
the good news is that the UNT have been driven out, but the bad news is that they're driven out by the Warforged
And core.
and Core.
Or yeah.
Well, that's concerning. Do the people of Ravenmore have anything to fear from?
Well, they came in as the heralds of their salvation. So I
He
think
kind of like tilts his head to the side with a squint.
I think that
That's the two evils.
I think that whatever Orin has planned is he's trying to gain their trust. So I don't think they're in immediate danger.
I returned from Farendel to here, and then immediately was overwhelmed when I returned to the Shadowfell. So I don't know much of what happened in Farendel after things went poorly.
Neither do we, to be honest. We were in the Feywild for 2 weeks.
Well, if what you say is true, and Core doesn't mean the people any harm, at least for the time being, I suppose that's all well and good. I probably won't be able to stay within the city. I'd imagine that they'll have people looking for me, but I don't imagine that. I suppose I'll have to get the orphans out, but
They should be out. Or at least they were on their way out. But I guess they were.
If they had Dawn, I have to assume that they had Dawn's charges too.
I don't know if
Alan,
they're on the way out because they came here for a reason, right? Did they come here for the presence of the Shadowfell leaking in?
the orphans?
The Warforged.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The Warforged.
You had learned that people from Redwater sent out a distress messenger to the capital asking for help, but hadn't seen any reinforcements come. And then when Kuor arrived, he told you that they had received word that there was something happening here and come to sort of resolve the situation. So that's what you knew.
yeah, the orphans, I guess, were swept up in the Warforged, rounded up by the Warforged
And
as well.
Manus's
But
eyes feel with concern, and he interrupts you and says, "But they're okay, right? No
they're
one was-"
okay. They were actually quite central in saving a lot of people, and a lot of refugees were hiding out underground for a long time. We were trying to orchestrate a plan to get them out of the city, but the Warforged came in.
When you talk about how they were sort of essential in trying to get the refugees out and all of that, you can't see, or you can't. You notice that he can't help but show a faint smile for a brief moment before returning to seriousness, and he just sort of nods and says, "They followed their training."
They were extremely helpful for us.
Well, I'm glad. If they brought you this far and you managed to rescue me, then that speaks to what they've learned in the amount of time that they've been with me. So I confess I'm a little proud.
You should be.
And he then smiles brightly again and looks at the group of you and says, "And even prouder of the group of you. I feel that I owe you a greater debt than I could ever repay. I never once dreamed, well, it has for a long time been my mission to find anyone with whom I could venture into the Shadowfell and slay Alkeen once and for all." And he looks Harmony and Hunter specifically and says, "And when you two came into Tal's life, I confess, I had hope that maybe one day we could take on that venture together, but I had no idea you'd grow so much in such a short time."
We're as surprised as you are, to be honest.
Yeah. Hunter will pat him on the shoulder and say, "This is part of our deal, remember? For us to come in here together. It's no problem."
Yeah, he chuckles and says, "I remember we made a deal, but to be honest, I wasn't expecting it to be fulfilled, and if it did come to fruition, I thought it would take much longer for you to grow as much as you have."
Harmony wishes she could grow a little more in more ways than
Well, it may not have happened so soon if Elkeen hadn't forced our hand.
He like nods to the side and says, "Be that as it may, it doesn't diminish the efforts that the group of you put forth, and I'm in your debt forever." And he smiles again and says, "When a dragon says they owe you forever, you have a long time to cash in on that debt."
Mandus, I'm not sure that our work is over. Do you know, getting back to the subject, will the influence on Ravenmore be over?
He sort of shrugs his shoulders and says, "I can't say. I do know with many powerful creatures that extend, for example, powerful dragons sometimes extend influence over."
Check another one off the agenda.
He says powerful dragons sometimes extend an influence over the region of territory in which they dwell, and usually when a dragon dies, the effect on that area will fade after some time. I can only hope and pray that this will be the case with Alkeen as well.
Oh, that reminds me. You take off the ring that has Kaitus's spirit in it.
And as you take it off and sort of show it to him, you can see he visibly recoils from it a little bit. "Harmony, where did you get that?"
It was on Kaitus, on his body.
Now you can see that he calms down a little bit as you explain, and he nods and says, "That makes sense."
Just don't touch the stone, but if you put it on, you can talk to him. If you want.
He tilts his head to the side and says, "Talk to him?"
Just try it.
He hesitates to take it, and before he does, he says, "I guess I should explain what this is precisely.
Maybe.
And then maybe I'll take it from you. But this ring, well, it was part of Alkeen's, and his voice falters a little bit. He says, torture of Kaitus and myself. The ring, when worn, shields its wearer in a number of ways, mentally, and then also from many of the effects of being in the negative energy plane, and he gestures towards the dark mirror that is floating in the center of the tower. It allows those who wouldn't normally be able to bear the pain and agony inflicted by the plane of negative energy to bear it for incredible amounts of time, but it doesn't diminish. It still hurts.
That is looks at man to see if he's wearing one of these rings.
I did the same, yeah. That's thinking.
He's not at the moment, and he sees you. He catches your glance and says, "Alkeen rotated Kaitus and me in the plane, but when the group of you came and Kaitus needed to go with Ixtlavi to deal with you, he put me in, and well, I don't know if he expected me to live, but I must confess I don't have fond memories of that ring." And he sort of takes it with hesitation.
Well, Kaitus is in there. I don't know how, and it's not the evil warped Kaitus that has been our foe.
And his eyes brighten as you say
I
that.
think Kaitus, as you knew him all those years ago, he helped us find you, and if there's a way that you can free him from this, maybe you should keep it.
I don't know anything about ways to free him, but if it's a means to speak with my old friend, even if it is an ugly reminder of past traumas, I'll take it. And he extends his hand for it.
Just don't touch the stone, okay?
And he nods. I'm aware. The stone is a special substance native to the plane, and he gestures towards the mirror. It is hostile to life, to say the least, and he slides the ring onto his finger. and you sort of watch the moment you witnessed before when Eli was messing with the ring, where that mental communication is established, and so his eyes kind of like look up a little bit, that sort of thing. And as that moment sort of ends, you see it transitions into a smile. And Mandus looks to the group of you and sort of just hangs his head and says, I know I've said it several times already, but there are no words to express how much I owe the group of you.
Well, let's save that for when we actually get safely out of this dump, huh?
I need to leave. I don't like spending time here.
Then we can have a big party after.
Fair enough.
One more question, though.
Yes?
I point to the tower that my shadow is pulling me towards.
Right, yeah, and so the shadow has sort of constantly been pulling you. Like, weekly, it's like when a small dog is tugging at the leash. Like, you have control, but it's still going to try. It's pulling you in that direction constantly. Mm-hmm.
Do you know anything about what's in that tower?
He looks in that direction and says, yeah, it's a prison of sorts. Alkeen kept humanoids and things there. Things that... he had jailers which would torture them and perform rituals to turn them into undead and all sorts of things.
So it's probably not safe to make a pit stop.
He shrugs and says, look around. And he sort of gestures down to the ground, which from here you can see quite clearly. And you can see in the distance, there are like the zombies and skeletons and things that surrounded this, the fields around this castle seem to be scattering off in every direction. It seems Alkeen's minions are aware of his demise, so it could be safer.
A pretty spectacular show, maybe say so myself.
Why do you want to go over there, Harmony?
Well, I've got this funny feeling. It's not really important.
The arms crossed, like,
But like, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but like, some weird things happen to me sometimes, and like, my shadow's been kind of acting weird since we got here. Does that ever happen
as
to
she
you?
calls attention to it, you guys can see Harmony's monstrous shadow, the hulking form of some demonic creature, seems to be straining against her, trying to head in that direction. Like pumping his arms furiously.
Wow, that
I
is
don't know how I
so
missed it.
cool.
Well-
What is that been going on, Harmony?
Pretty much since we got here. It's been a little
When did it
distracting.
even come back?
What?
So when did it even come back?
I don't know. I didn't really notice it until
Are
we
you-
got here.
I mean,
you
it's
sure
not that
it
it came
isn't?
back. It's different. It's distinct from Harmony's
It's
shadow.
not my
for sure.
shadow. I mean, but it's kind of, I don't know.
Did you
I- No, but it really wants to go to that tower, and so I was thinking maybe we just go see what's there and why it wants. Maybe it will leave me alone. Maybe I can get rid of it.
I don't think we have any trips reservations for the Shadowfell again. So,
He sounds like a
that would
warforged tonight.
be, you know,
I don't have any reservations to come back to the Shadowfell.
yeah.
Mara, would you like to join me in searching for Alkeen's treasure hoard? Well,
There is one.
one must assume.
Well, I'm always up for a treasure hunt.
While Harmony deals with her shadow.
Love, pirate.
Yeah, I'll come with Harmony.
Okay.
Hey, Ethan.
Yep.
Does this time talking and discussing count as a short rest, or is it not long enough?
You guys could certainly take a short rest if you want.
Thank you.
I think like as
I only have 21 hit points left.
as Thaddeus leaves, he leans
We
into
haven't
Hunter
leveled up
and
yet 'cause we
says,
haven't slept.
if you see Harmony picking up any evil artifacts, do not let her put it on.
I'll clasp his shoulder and
Everything
say,
is
"Don't worry, Thaddeus. I've been with her for a while."
Eli will watch over
Yeah,
it.
is Eli gonna come with us?
Yeah.
Yeah, Eli will go with Harmony.
I feel like we need somebody with some kind of divine magic to protect us.
Yeah, he's your guardian angel, alright. You need him sitting on your other shoulder
Fucking
with the other
Lord.
demon.
21? Are you kidding me?
Alright, so who do we want to deal with first? Those who are going treasure hunting or those who are going...
Hey, Mara, if you find anything really, really shiny, save me one, okay?
Really? Always?
Yeah, I
Look
know,
at those fat earrings you're wearing, girl.
but I made these.
I
Oh,
stole them for you.
You're talking about this one. Yeah, just, be on the lookout,
I'll like whisper back to Thaddeus and be like, watch Mara.
You really want to come with us, don't you, Hunter? I know you do.
Well, somebody has to come with me. I'm not gonna die by
He
myself.
shrugs. He's like, Bianca can go with you, and I'll look at Bianca. But I think this is fine.
Yeah, if you're looking at Vyako and sort of telling him to go one way or another, he sort of like nods as you say it. Just tell me which group he's going with and he can go with whoever.
Yeah, come with us.
And I'll kind of ask Bianco, like, do you want to go with Bianco? You can if you'd like. Or you
He
can stay
sort
with
of
me.
shrugs his hulking, like massive tiger shoulders and like looks to you for direction. So if you're telling him to go that way, he will go that way.
Yeah, I'll say, why don't you protect him for me, okay? And I'll pet his head and stuff, and I'll be like, go protect him for me. Then we'll meet up in a little bit.
Okay.
1, 2.
If
So
I need you.
who do you guys want to? What do you want to deal with first? Do you want to search for
I'm
treasure?
real
Let's-
curious about the shadow stuff.
I am too, but why don't you guys do the treasure first?
Okay.
As you descend the spiral staircase and make your way back into the castle proper, back through Ixlati's bedroom and sort of into that main hall, and then separate off into different groups.
Hunter
Hunter has
does.
Okay, we'll borrow it from you. We're
Yeah.
borrowing your bag of holding.
Burning what?
The bag of holding.
Oh, sure. Yeah, okay. So I'll hand them the bag of holding.
Okay.
Good call.
Why don't one of you with advantage, whichever one has the better, roll an investigation check?
It's probably you minus +0.
No, she's got a -2 to investigation.
Okay.
Oh,
Well,
Maybe I
yeah,
can't
it
go
is
with you
minus
guys.
2.
oh, but I'd be rolling.
What about Bianco?
If I went with you guys, I have a +7.
To investigation? Shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I would be rolling at regular. I wouldn't be rolling at advantage because I have a little exhaustion.
Oh, so you'd be rolling at disadvantage.
Well, no, but I would have advantage, so it would cancel out. But Mara, if she was going to roll, would be going to get advantage.
Okay.
Even though I have to take -2.
Yeah, but I think it's
But
better
it'd
that
still
way.
be.
Okay.
Wait,
I'm
did you
trying
get
to
the
think if
exhaustion?
the carpenters tool.
Kai's breath weapon, I think.
It was Caius' breath
Yeah.
weapon. Yeah.
Let's see. I can find hidden doors, some traps and squeaks, and I can make doors harder to open. Okay, so I don't think they're gonna happen. So 13.
13. Okay.
No, but
You search the castle, and there are several floors to it, so it takes a little while.
yeah.
Descending back to the first floor, you find yourself in that dining hall room where the dinner was all set up, and you quickly find that there is an armory and a kitchen in the area behind the curtain that was dividing the space. Silly dogs. And the skeleton laborers who were bringing out wine and things like that seem to have all deserted this area entirely.
Okay, so the minions are gone from there.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on there?
You begin your search sort of down there, and in the armory, there's a lot of mundane armor and things like that in there. But one thing you do find is sort of buried amidst a pile of various pieces of armor and things like that. There is a stone, maybe about the size of like a, I don't know, like a little bit smaller than a baseball, that seems to pulse with a blue, like a pale blue energy. The color of it seems remarkable and astounding, considering that the Shadowfell drains color from most things. This color still seems to be showing through and piercing through the shadowy darkness.
Wow. Okay. I don't know if we should touch it.
I'll take it.
Just scoop it.
I'll take it.
Yeah, you scoop it up into your hand, and it's almost cool to the touch a little bit. And it seems to be, like, even as you touch it, you feel like where it touches the palm of your hand, there's a tingle of magical energy. It's some sort of powerful magical item that was seemingly lost and forgotten here. The other thing that you guys find, you find in Ixlati's chambers when you give them a thorough trashing, pulling out drawers and all of that. You find
I enjoy that.
you find in one of the drawers a pouch of gems of immaculate nature. They are absolutely stunning.
I thought you were going to say they're absolutely real.
They do appear real as well. So there's 5 of them total, and I will just tell you so I don't have to remember it later. They are each worth 1,000 gold pieces.
Oh shit!
Woo.
How many thousands?
Each worth 1,000.
There's 5,000?
Yes.
Okay, I'm writing it down.
And that is what
Harmony's
you managed to find
really good
in a
about
search
this.
of the castle.
She's gonna be happy we separated.
Do we see Dimitri in our search? Or has he also fled?
He also seems to have vanished
Okay.
from the premises for now.
I think the last thing that Thaddeus is going to do during the search is just to go to somewhere like centrally located on the first floor and use Divine Sense again.
As you do that, from the first floor, you feel the presence of no undead around you. The one other thing of note that is not magic item related is when you ascend to the 3rd floor, you enter into a room that must be above the main dining hall because it has a similar shape and construction to it. But it's this dimly lit room filled with pedestals, and then as you sort of walk forward into the room and cast light into it, you realize that attached to the pedestal by some sort of magic, and as you look down at the bottom of the pedestals, you can see there's runes carved in there, seem to be the shadows. They're inert shadows. They're just suspended in midair, sort of above the pedestals and connected to it by magic. The shadows of a wide variety of creatures, just an incredible amount of different creatures. There's some that are dragon-shaped, some that are more humanoid-shaped, some that are shaped in absolutely alien configurations of limbs and tentacles and things like that. And in the sort of the far corner of the room is almost like a sewing workshop. There's needles and things like that are carved with arcane runes. And you surmise that this is, Dimitri actually mentioned it to you, the Gallery of Stolen Shadows.
Can I search this room to see if I can find Harmony's actual shadow in here?
Sure, go ahead and roll a perception check.
Okay.
Oh no.
5.
Right. Well, you go pedestal to pedestal and look at each individual shadow, and some of them are absolutely horrifying. Like, they're massive, taking up huge amounts of space, and you wouldn't want to imagine the creature that it's attached to. But none of the pedestals feature a statue that, a shadow that resembles Harmony.
I can't even remember when I lost it. It's been a
So-
real long
It was a
time.
long time ago.
Time, yeah.
Alright, I'm done with my search. Do you have anything else, Mark?
Okay, so earlier when we were in the dining room, I checked for hidden walls, hidden things.
Hmm.
Can I try to check?
Yeah. So
see
when
if I
you're
can find
in
it, like,
the
treasure chest or something?
armory,
Tools.
you actually do find in the back of the wall, with your proficiency with the woodworker's tools, you find a hidden passage set into the wall, and it reveals a stone passageway that angles off diagonally, and then eventually opens up at a doorway into a spiral staircase that goes upward. And sort of looking up, you can imagine that this is probably the same spiral staircase that you entered from a different level. But there's a secret passageway from the armory that goes that direction. The only other thing that you would possibly find in terms of secret passageways... no, that's the only one on my map.
Hidden
Yeah.
alcove or something like that.
Hidden alchemy.
Oh, but at in the middle of that passageway, there also is a grate over what looks to be a hole that descends downward, and it looks like the grate could be lifted, but it's currently set into the ground.
We haven't come across anything in the castle that might have been like, yeah, because that's a good call. Like any coffins or resting places for Alkene?
You found a sort of unceremonial, typical wooden construction coffin on the actually up in the attic when you went up there, but it doesn't seem to be the sort of thing that a narcissistic vampire like Alkene would rest in. So you still don't seem to have found Alkene's
I
coffin.
want to try and pull up this crate.
Okay. It's not hard with your strength. You pull it up with a heavy heave, and there's a hole there that just descends down deep into darkness.
I'll light up the sword and jump down.
You're gonna go down? I was gonna say I'm very light and can go.
Okay, go for it.
Mario, you're gonna leap down?
Yeah.
Make a
Use
dexterity
dark
saving
sight.
throw, just to see how you land.
Dexterity save.
Which way?
Ready?
Okay.
It's like a perfect three-point landing.
Yeah.
With my clever landing?
Well, you take no bludgeoning damage as you land then, just cat-like on the ground. And you find yourself in a room.
Don't say.
It's better than in the sewer.
True.
It's a small squarish room, and you can see that you descended from one hole in the ceiling, but there's also another one on sort of the other side of the room that goes upward. And in this room, there is a coffin, a stone coffin, set on top of a raised pedestal that you sort of have to ascend a couple stairs to get up to. And there are, facing inward towards that coffin, 4 statues of bats with their wings spread wide. And then at the far end of the chamber, there is an altar of some kind, sort of overlooking the entire room.
Okay, so I'm gonna call up to Dad and tell him what I saw.
Do you have any?
Do you want to come down and help me open the coffin? It's stone.
Sure. And dice can have to make the same saving throw, isn't
Mm-hmm, sure is.
Come on, you can do it! You got those awesome boots.
Nah, it's a 4.
Okay, alright.
No, wait, no, it's an 8.
Okay.
Bonus.
I'm by default at +0.
So you take
It's my
18
worst.
bludgeoning damage
Oh, ouch.
as you fall 60 feet
It's
and
a good
land
thing
with a
I took
heavy...
that- I think I took that short rest.
Right?
Yeah, your knees ache as you sort of stand up.
He like watches Mara thinking she's
Yeah.
making it look super easy. It's no big deal. He jumps down and it's like,
Oh!
yeah, no.
And you find yourself in the same room.
Alright, I think
We should open it. See what
I think we should, and that is like rummaging around in his pack and pull out the holy water so we can desecrate it.
Good idea. Okay.
Alright?
Yaku with us?
Hey, you've got holy water.
Yako is sort of at the
He's looking
top
at
in the
us.
hallway, looking downward and unable to
Alright.
see you at the moment.
He can protect us up there if something weird happens. Alright,
So you're going to open the coffin. Who's opening it?
both of us, I
Both of
guess.
us, yeah.
Stone.
Both each take one side and heave.
Okay.
You're scared of what you're gonna find in there.
Well, it is creepy.
Thaddeus, as you open up the coffin, I need you to make a Constitution saving throw.
Okay, I'm better at those.
Oh no.
Well, that won't save me. 8.
8. Okay. Let me mentally do some math for a second. Hold on.
And this is how Thaddeus got his.
It might be.
Oh! Yeah, I know.
Thaddeus, you take 50 points of necrotic damage.
50?
Yes.
Okay.
As a blast of necrotic energy washes over you, and as you push the.
Do you
the
still have your
lid
aura
off.
going?
Do you have any good berries?
My armor? It won't help me.
Your aura vitality or whatever you have?
Aura of life?
Oh,
Reduces necrotic damage?
How long does it last?
lasts for, I think, an hour, actually.
But we were short resting, so.
Yeah, we
It's
took
only
that
like
short
20 or
rest.
30 minutes,
We
right?
took that
So
short, well, it's a short rest, it's an hour, so yeah, it's gone. Is this the
Okay.
kind of necrotic damage that kills you if you drop to 0?
I mean, by the book, no. No, it's not.
Okay, then Thaddeus isn't dead, but he's like,
Unconscious.
he's
Yeah,
out.
so Mara, you watch as the coffin lid grinds off the stone base of it. There's a wave of necrotic energy that washes over Thaddeus, and you just happen to be not in the direction that the wave. Man, I rolled odd or even, and it was Thaddeus. And you watch as Thaddeus, sort of the life drains from him, and he begins to almost shrivel a little bit and falls back unconscious.
Okay, so I'm gonna go and give him a good berry.
Okay. So you rush over, slide on your knees over to him, drop the good berry in his mouth, force him to chew it, and Thaddeus, with a gasp, you are conscious again after an intensely painful experience.
We thought we would be the ones in the dangerous mission.
I know, right?
Maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Okay, well it's
And Thaddeus, here, I'm tired.
I think
He gives you the holy water.
She has some too.
I have
Oh, you still have
I
some,
have some
okay.
too, so okay, so do we see anything else in there before I
Now that Thaddeus is down here and his light is illuminating the room a little bit better, you can see that on the altar in the back, there is actually seems to be the bones of some creature, a skeleton or something is laid across the altar. You can also see the glitter of gold from that direction.
Open the
So-
coffin of your greatest enemy.
We had to
we
destroy
wanna
it.
make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we wanna make sure. Okay, so we have 2 vials of holy water.
I've got
We
one,
should
you've got
sprinkle
one.
one
Yeah.
in the coffin and maybe some
Yeah,
other
I'll go over
bones.
to the altar.
You stagger over to there,
This is about it.
and you see that there's actually gold, like basically there's a skeleton laid across the altar. It seems to be of some sort of humanoid.
Mhm.
Hard to tell since it's decomposed to the point of being just
Yeah.
bones. But in between its bones and sort of piled up around it, there is quite a large pile of gold and platinum.
First, I'm going to take the holy water and just like douse it along the altar.
Smart move. The water sprinkles out over everything. Nothing like sizzles and burns
Yeah,
or
yeah,
anything like that. But safety precautions are safety
Yeah.
precautions. Then what?
I think the next thing I'm going to do before I take the gold is ring the bell again.
In this room, it really echoes, and you can almost like visualize the image of the sound traveling up the two passageways out of here as it just rings out. It seems to have almost a more sorrowful tone than before in some sense, but it doesn't seem to do anything.
And then I'm going to take. It's mostly like money here.
Yes,
the gold is not
it
like
is
a thing.
entirely gold and platinum that are piled up around.
I'm going to take the skull of this creature.
Okay.
Because it might make a good gift for the Burblings. And I'll give
Really smart.
the sack to Mara and say, help yourself.
Awesome. I think the group will like this too. We're gonna be so popular when we get back.
Yes, yes.
So if you scoop up all the money here, which will take you some time, there are 2,000 gold pieces and, 100 platinum pieces. So essentially 3,000 gold pieces.
Okay, Mara's gonna kind of like roll in it first.
Just with the bones on
like
the
a
altar.
pile of leaves, like just
No, I'm
jump
gonna
right
make
into
a
it.
pile of gold first before I put it in.
Scrooge
Ah, bones, that's creepy.
Oh.
And you're sprinkling holy water onto the coffin as well?
Yeah, we did that first.
Yeah, when you did that, unlike the altar where the water just kind of like flecked all of the bones and things like that and sort of stayed and sort of dripped down the bones and stuff like that, it almost seems to be absorbed into the stone of the coffin. And the inside of the coffin had this sort of like unnatural darkness to it, even in the light of your sword. But after the holy water is sprinkled in and absorbed in, that darkness sort of seeps away, and the shadow around that area returns to a normal cast.
All right. Well, once Mara's in collecting, swimming in her gold, I'm ready
it's
for
enough
return
that
to
you
the
could
others.
pile it up and dive in like a pile of raked leaves or something like that.
I'm ready to return to the others.
Alright, okay. Can I go over to the other tunnel kind of thing and look up and see what's up there?
Oh, the other great museum.
Oh yeah. Yeah, when you look up, you can actually see the edge of the tower that you were fighting on. And sort of by positioning it out and like making a guess, you would assume that you're actually looking up through the shaft of the well in the courtyard between the tower and the main section of the castle.
Okay. Alright, so I guess we'll have to, well, you can jump out probably, right?
Probably, yeah.
If you're
How high is it?
It was a 60-foot fall.
Oh no, I don't think I could jump that high.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to
We might live here now.
Can't cast fly again.
no, I was going to say, get one of my barbed arrows and attach a rope to it and shoot that and maybe have Byaku pull it somewhere.
Yako, yeah, he's up at the top. Go ahead and make an attack roll.
This one was good before. Okay, so that is like 13.
All right. I mean, that's enough. It clatters up at the top, and you see Byakko kind of like look down at you, and then put his teeth into the rope and begin to pull up. And Zach, would you make me a strength check for Byakko? But he is weakened.
Oh no.
A 3 plus 4. No, wait, no, I'm sorry. He has minus strength.
Yes.
He's got a 5.
Yes.
So 5 total.
5 total.
He's straining against it, but he can't seem to get any purchase.
You can't just wrap
He's
around
trying real hard.
I'm a pillar.
So he got a 5 total.
5. I rolled a 3 and it's plus 2 right now.
Would you make a dexterity save for him too?
Oh no.
We might live down
Yeah, sure. It's fine.
Oh no.
That is a
We're gonna find you down there like, what are you guys doing down there?
No, we're very resourceful.
19.
19?
19.
Yeah, Mara, you actually begin to like pull Byakko down there, and you can see that he's being pulled forward, but he actually manages to leap across the other side of the pit, land, but letting go of the arrow, which then plummets down with your rope.
All right, hang on a
I
second.
think Byakko would start like looking for me at this point. He'd like turn his head, like look down hallways, maybe like moat and to come and hit me or something.
Yeah, so he kind of pads off. But the walls here are like bricks and things, and there are holes in them, so they could be climbable.
Mhm.
If
All
you
right.
wanted to try.
You have like
That's what I was gonna say. We used him. I don't know if I got him back. Because we've been going.
Like climbing
I climbed
titans?
a lot, but yeah. I don't know, but I can't remember if I got
I
him
assume
back.
you got him back.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you?
Okay, so I'm lighter than you. I'll go climb up, and then I'll send a rope down.
Secure it fast, because I am heavy.
Mara can make, she can, if she wants to make athletics checks at advantage, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, then why don't you make an athletics check at advantage?
Are you proficient at athletics?
Yeah.
Oh, this is great.
So if you're proficient, you can't get less than a 10.
Yeah, but
Oh.
you got way
Not
better.
that it matters.
Yeah, so 19.
So
I
you
did
begin
one
climbing.
die, I want to know.
You
Plus
find
5.
oh, so 24 total.
Yeah.
Easy. You put your hands into the bricks here and there, pulling yourself upward, and then you get to a place where there's less handholds, but no problem. You like stick your back against one side of the wall and like walk up with your feet a little ways until you've got handholds again, and then you climb up the rest of the way and hoist yourself up, and then lower a rope, and then Thaddeus, you can make an athletics check at advantage as well because you have a rope.
Okay,
So
but
straight
not
roll.
so straight roll, because I'm
Right.
tired.
Mm-hmm.
Athletics check?
Yep.
Okay. 17.
17.
So glad we brought that.
Easy enough with the rope and Mara pulling from above. You manage struggling to get to the top and pull yourself up.
Well, if worse comes to worse, I could have prepared to create food and water tomorrow. But thankfully, it does not come to that.
Well, I think I would have made a ladder out of bones. Really, that was my second thought.
Oh boy.
Shall we join the others?
That's like Mara.
Do you think that they're any better off than we are?
Maybe Eli has another healing slot open for you.
Fingers crossed. Alright. I'm ready to see what these two are up to.
Okay, so meanwhile,
Can't
Our
wait to
ears
tell
are burning.
Harmony. I can't wait to tell Harmony what an adventure you've had.
Oh, all we got.
Oh yeah.
You're
That
gonna be
too.
safe.
Hey, Jesus.
the group of you, Harmony, Eli, and Hunter, are pulled by
Is
Harmony's
Mandus with us
shadow.
too?
Yeah, Mandus will go with you guys. Are pulled by Harmony's shadow out of Ixtalati's bedroom into that main hall, through a doorway to the right into what looks to be a library with just books piled up to the 20-foot high ceiling. There is in the corner the corner seems to be obfuscated entirely by webs of some large spider or something or other, but you can avoid that entirely.
Why is it always spiders?
As your shadow then pulls you the opposite direction through a door into what appears to be a personal study, and then out through another door, which leads you onto a walkway. And this walkway is covered, but it has windows, and actually in the middle of the walkway, there's a place where the stone has crumbled away, and you can look out over the outside of this tower, and you can see that from this walkway, that it basically extends out over the chasm to an island that exists in the middle of the chasm, where the tower that your shadow is pulling you towards exists. So you basically are currently on a walkway that extends over that bottomless chasm that you've witnessed several times.
Well, everyone be careful not to fall off. That's a long drop.
Fortunately, like I said, most of it is a walled walkway, so there's not really much opportunity to fall off. And then the walkway ends in an iron door, which is closed.
Is it locked?
You try it.
With my mage hand.
Your mage hand struggles and pulls against the door, but it's too heavy.
Hunter, it's too heavy.
Yep. Yeah, I'll step up once the mage hand fails. And I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, there's a grinding sound of metal against stone as you pull the door open. It must weigh like 100 and some pounds. It's a heavy door.
That's nothing.
You're strong.
You hoist it open and you find yourself in a room that actually sort of defies the shape of the tower. The tower itself was circular, but this room seems to be square and also bigger than the constraints of the tower itself. And you can see that jail cells line the walls in this dark room. But that's about all you can see from this initial position.
I've got
Give
dark
us some
vision.
light, please.
Yeah, I've got dark vision. I don't care.
Eli casts light onto Hunter's shield so that the rest of you can see. And Mandus sort of looks to the group of you and says, I don't think I should go first.
I'll go first.
Okay. You sort
And
of...
I'll pull my sword and shield out, and I'll just kind of walk. I'll ask Harmony for where she's getting pulled.
Yeah,
and
if-
walk that way.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm gonna walk kind of
I'll like walk right behind me.
slightly behind you
Yeah,
and tell you where to go.
yeah. But just like sit on my shoulders and just point that way.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm gonna sit on your shoulders, but I'm not gonna do that.
So yeah, you don't want to do that? Okay, that's fine.
No, not in front of Eli.
Oh yeah, okay, that's fine. Eli can sit on Mandus' shoulders.
But yeah, I'll basically be walking behind you and telling you which way to go.
Yeah.
You make your way cautiously into the room, and Harmony, your shadow seems to be pulling you to one of the cells in the very far corner from you. And as you're walking past the other cells, you sort of can peer in, and some of them seem to contain decomposing bodies in piles and heaps. Some of them have, as you sort of shy away from the bars a little bit from these ones, you see that there are undead zombies and skeletons and things that sort of paw their hands through the bars as you walk by them, but they're easily avoided because the room is wide enough. And eventually you find your way to that far cell corner, and what you see in there, the first thing that grabs your eyes is sort of in like the far corner of the cell, curled up, is what can only be described as a massive pile of scales. There seems to be a scaled creature in there that has, even in this light you can see it's got like these reddish or magenta-ish scales to it, but it seems to be curled up in a sleeping position with its back to the cell door. And as you get closer to it, you can hear the sounds of snoring coming from it. And then as you approach the cell, the last thing you see is that the entire cell, inside and out, seems to be surrounded with a thick ring of salt, just traced around the cell, with this thing in the center. And the deep snoring sounds just continue as you approach. And your shadow, as you stop in front of this door, just begins to, it's struggling towards the creature.
Starting to wonder if we got
Wait,
the
what
easy
happens?
job.
Oh, the shadow does?
The shadow did, yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me? Like Peter Pan or something, kind of weird, twisted way.
Excuse me, Mr. Scaly person?
The snoring ceases, but there's a brief moment of no movement from the creature. But then in sort of a slow, deliberate series of motions, the creature sort of sits up. And as it does, let me pull up this creature so that I can describe it well. You can see that
Stupid.
it has wrapped around its upper body as it sort of sits up to a sitting position, still with its back towards you. These large bat-like wings that are covered with scales similar to the rest of its body that were wrapped around it like a blanket almost. And as it sits up, it unfurls those slowly and sort of stretches them. You can see like the muscles in there tensing, and there are thick muscles under those wings. And you can also see the back of its head, which has a pair of horns that extend upward and outward, kind of like bison horns, but backwards from the back of its head. And it stretches upward, incredibly thick and muscular arms, and sort of then slowly and deliberately unfurls a powerful tail, which stretches as well, as it then turns around, and you can see the fiendish face of some kind of devil, very clearly what's the word I'm looking for? Infernal in nature, with these glowing orange eyes and long fangs of sorts. But this fiendish visage is off-put by a pair of tiny spectacles which it wears across its nose, and actually a necktie, which probably is about the size of a human man. Like, it's probably about the size of Thaddeus, which descends down to sort of its belly button area, as this creature turns around and looks at the group of you and says, "Oh my." It's been quite some time since I've had any sort of visitors who weren't the vampire and that ghastly Medusa.
Well, I don't think they're going to be coming anytime soon. They are kind of...
Why is that? Have you killed them? Are they dead? Have you slain them?
Yes.
Well, that is the best news I've heard in a millennia.
Hi.
Hello.
I didn't catch your name.
Well, that's because I haven't given it yet. Hold on, let me find it in my notes. He says, "I'm Vialtar. Pleased to meet you."
Vialtar.
And who do I have the honor of addressing?
Well, I'm Harmony. And this is Hunter and Eli and Mandus.
Mandus has sort of like stepped back and leaned against a cell where there's a bunch of bodies piled up, just sort of like to see what's going to happen. Vialtar says, "Well, I'd love to shake your hand and make your acquaintance properly, but I'm afraid I can't leave this this cell at the moment. I must ask, and I apologize if I'm being forward, but is there any chance that I could persuade you to free me from here?"
I've been known to befriend things from other realms. I could maybe.
Hunter,
Then
like,
you start
based
getting
on
into
the
games.
remembers the
Yeah.
like
And it's just like, what is
police
happening?
officers and stuff.
The
He goes,
reason we're here, actually, I think I have something that belongs to you.
"Oh, is that right?" His eyes fall on the shadow for the first time, and he says, "Ah, yes, the vampire. He took that from me. He used some sewing needles of sorts, and he stitched it off of me. I must say, I'm not quite sure how I could get it back from you."
I'm not quite sure how to give it back. It kind of just showed up one day.
Well, if I must confess, I don't really need a shadow, and really, what I need more than anything is out of here. You see, I've been gone from the Hells for quite some time, and I'm sure my mistress is in need of me. And I can see, of course, that you're of some sort of infernal legacy, of course. I wouldn't presume to know your bloodline, but it seems as if you must have originated from the Hells at one point, and you can understand my plight, clearly.
Yeah. It's been a long time since my people were in the Hells, at least as far as I understand it. I've never been there personally. It sounds kind of awful, if you ask me, but...
Well, it does have its pleasures and its displeasures. It's a different way of life. It's not for everyone. I do need to be getting back, though. You see, my mistress, Glacia, she'll be... well, I can't imagine how she's been getting on without me. I shudder to think that she might have promoted one of the lesser devils in her service, because there's no chance that they will be doing as good of a job as I would have. And he sort of puffs his chest and says,
What
You're, of
exactly
course-
is your job?
"You are, of course, looking at one of the leading contract experts of the Nine Hells. A lawyer of sorts."
Oh, God.
Are they speaking common?
Yeah, he is speaking common. But there's sort of an undertone to his speech, which Harmony you would pick up as a little bit of like, it's just a tiny hint of that infernal accent.
I look
Makes
at
him sound
Hunter.
British.
I look at Hunter.
Hunter looks back.
Of course, I would be remiss if I didn't offer some sort of reward for breaking this salt ring and freeing me from my 100-year-long prison. There are,
During
of
this
course.
exchange, can I use Know Your Enemy on this devil?
Yeah, sure. What do you want to know about him?
I want to know his HP compared to mine.
How much HP do you have?
I am currently at 101.
He has more HP than you.
Okay. And his armor class, is it higher than 21?
It is lower than 21.
Okay.
Yeah, you sort of apprise his scales and find various weak points and things where his armor doesn't seem to compare to what you have encased your body in. And you also evaluate his constitution and see that he would certainly be a tough enemy to fell by physical means.
Can I
Yeah.
insight check him?
Yeah, sure.
See if he's being
Yeah, I'd
truthful?
like to as well on a couple of things when I'm going to ask him.
Should I take a canvas? It's
Up to
kind
you.
of okay, but it's kind of blah. What did you get? Did you insight check him?
I was going to insight when I asked him, I was going to say, Mr. Vile, how did you get into this predicament?
Excuse me, I just must correct you. It's Valtar.
Vile tar.
Valtar.
I didn't hear the last part. So
That's quite all right.
Valtar, okay.
I just wanted to make sure. It's of utmost importance when dealing with new partners that you just are all on the same page in terms of
Sure.
all aspects of the
My
communication.
apologies.
Beginning with, of course,
Mr. Valtar.
first and foremost, names.
14 was my insight check.
Okay.
It's not great.
He seems, so far as he seems sincere, and you know that when a devil makes a deal, they're bound to it.
Yeah.
And he is offering a deal. You haven't quite heard exactly what he can offer yet, but he, as far as you can tell, is prepared to meet his end for his freedom.
Right.
And he goes on and says, right, like I was saying, I'm a lawyer of sorts in the service of my mistress Glacia, who is, of course, had been from the Hells, you would know, one of the archdukes of the Nine. So a being of quite a large amount of power, if I do say so myself. If I were able to escape this salt ring here and return to her services, I don't mean to make assumptions based on your appearance, but it is possible, I would contrive, that you may be party to, or in the future be involved in a contract of some sort. It's not impossible. So what I would offer is, should you ever seek assistance in forging a contract with terms that are favorable in your direction, or and this is something I pride myself on in being quite good, need to be broken from a contract, I will certainly do my utmost to do so.
I mean, it's a fair offer. And all we gotta do is break you out of this thing. That's all.
All that I require is for you to simply
There's
break
no,
the
like,
salt ring.
fine print that's gonna bound us to you for life and give
Well,
us your
here-
soul at some point.
I still want to know how he got in there.
Ah, yes, of course. I'm sorry. I would be remiss if I didn't regale you with the tale. Yes, it's a very long story, but suffice it to say, I was here on a... well, I was seeking to collect on a contract from a party whose soul mistakenly ended up in the Shadowfell when that ghastly vampire and his vile queen, well, they overpowered me, and I'm ashamed to admit it, but it's true. Amongst my type, I'm not the... There are much stronger of my type of devil out there. It's just something to be acknowledged. I'm more of one for the mind, and I've been here ever since.
And I rolled a 22 on that insight.
Yeah, he seems to be sincere. Like, he was here to collect a soul and take it to the Hells, and the Medusa and vampire got the better of him and threw him in here.
Yeah, and I'm gonna like whisper to Harmony and just say, I don't think we have business in the Hells. I don't know if we want to deal with this.
Yeah, you're probably right.
If he's so important, his, Archduke will come for him.
He sighs and says,
He's using the message, right?
"Oh, okay."
I'm like whispering.
You said
to
whisper, but
Harmony.
did you use the earring?
Yeah, the earring, sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Skype call.
Skype call within a Skype call. I'll message back and say, maybe you're right. But
And the only thing I'll say is, I don't know the entirety of your Moloch business, but that would be the only other bargaining chip that you could convince me that this is a good idea, if there's something you need for with that. But if you can't think of anything with Moloch, with him, that he could help with, then I'd say no.
player DM, Moloch isn't a contract-based thing, right?
There is some sort of contracted
I don't
nature to
remember
it.
agreeing to any contract. You just appeared because of my love.
Yeah, and some sort of contract
Yeah, I remember something.
outside of
There was a contract.
one forged between you and him was binding him to you.
Right.
So you didn't make a contract,
But somebody did.
but some force out there created a contract which bound Moloch to you,
Right. Okay.
at least for the time being.
Okay.
Real like shrugs, like that's the only thing I don't know about. If he seems pretty sincere about this, so if you need help with your current thing,
Look, cards on the table. As I mentioned, my lady Glacia is quite influential in the Hells. She's actually the daughter of Asmodeus, if you believe it, or so they say. I can offer treasure if that's what you'd like. I know that some adventurer types that is their temptation, but
offer what?
treasure, gold,
What was that? Treasure. Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't hear.
gems, magic, whatever it is you desire. I can procure it.
Out of character, because in character that would never be arguing for you to ask anything for the thing. But he might be able to tell us something about Mother Midnight, who is supposedly some kind of demon or devil, I think.
She was just a hag.
You learned that she had an alternate name, which was Maladar.
That's right.
And you also learned that name is associated with the being known as the Hag Countess, who was at one point an Archduke of the Nine Hells.
Yeah, that's the connection.
Okay. Oh, well. How about?
Wait. How about let's look at Mandus too. To see if anything good to say
Mandus
about
has been sort of like watching this interaction.
What if we ask him for an open favor? Something we can cash in later.
Mandus he comes over to you and he whispers, look, I'm not one to say that there are some beings which are absolutely and thoroughly evil, and many fiends, not all, are among them. He seems sincere in this moment, and if what he's saying is true about who he serves, he'd be a powerful ally to have. All I'll say is, tread carefully.
Thanks.
Make your terms very clear. I don't sense that he intends to cause harm physically to any of us. And he sort of like gives him a surveying look and says, and after what you did with Alkeen, I'm not sure that he could. But
True, yeah.
I'll look at Hunter. Say,
Back again.
can you just let me handle this one? I know that you may not agree with me, but
What are you gonna do?
Thaddeus leaves for 5 minutes.
This.
Well,
Hey,
you were
you
trapped at the
felt.
bottom of the world.
You were trapped at the bottom of the well,
He
alright?
almost dies.
I'm glad Thaddeus isn't here for this.
I
Because you
bet.
fuck up everything.
Yeah, I just ruined every deal you try to make with
Every-
the Force of Darkness.
Every time something comes up that might have some link to my backstory, you're like, Devil, Bane, die! You tried to kill Moloch! Okay.
I mean, Moloch's a twerp. He deserves it.
Anyways,
I mean, okay, but
I thought it was old for it.
I'm gonna let him out.
under what conditions?
I think I need the contract.
For what?
It's complicated, and I'm not sure, but he's right that my tribe is tied to the Nine Hells, and I might need it down the road. It's nice
Just
to
like
have
an open favor is what you want?
yeah, like an open
Like a
favor
tie?
to help with the contract thing down the road if I ever need help.
Mm.
It's not like it's hurting us or costing us anything right now.
As you guys are having this discussion, he's still just sort of sitting cross-legged, actually like physically twiddling his thumbs, waiting for you to come to a decision.
You're
Priest of Asmodeus, the one in the boat or whatever,
yeah.
aren't they bad people? Why would we want to ever support them? Support that Duke or whatever he is.
Harmony, you can make a, I'd say either history, arcana, or religion check at advantage.
Okay.
If it's arcana, it would be with intelligence.
Which is what I have here. So history, arcana, or religion?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yes, so history, arcana. Oh, natural 20.
Okay.
Thank you, Percy.
You know a little bit about the dynamics of the Archdukes. You know that Malagard was at one point ousted from the
Malagard
Archduke,
is
the
hag one.
Hag Countess,
Yep.
was
Okay.
ousted from her position as an Archduke of the 6th layer of the Nine Hells, a layer known as Malbolg. And you've heard of this new Archduke who this creature before you is referring to, named Glacia. And you have also heard rumor that she is in fact the daughter of Asmodeus, but that doesn't mean
What
she's
you
on.
just
right.
said. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that she's on good terms with him. There are rumors that you've heard sort of passed down in tradition from your tribe that she was put into her position as a punishment for rebelling against him.
Okay.
And somehow her position keeps her in check and prevents her from overthrowing him. Like it's nebulous and unclear, but that's sort of how the legend that was passed down through your tribe goes. So though she has some sort of weird infernal familial connection to Asmodeus, that doesn't mean she's his ally. Every devil in the Nine Hells is out for the position of the devil above it.
Right. Okay.
And that extends to the Archdukes.
Okay. So I'll say a hunter. Yes, Asmodeus is bad news. But this isn't Asmodeus we're dealing with.
Sure.
Just trust me on this one. And don't tell Thaddeus.
Oh, God.
He wouldn't understand. He's so blinded by his own idea of right and wrong. And I'm gonna walk up to the bars of the prison. And I'm gonna say,
Oh, have you reached a decision?
Beltar, I need 2 things from you if I let you go.
You name it, of course. My freedom is of the utmost importance to me.
Your first offer about the contract,
Yes?
maybe I don't have one now, but in the future, like you said, if I could ask you for help. If
Of
I need
course.
it.
This agreement of ours would extend for the extent of your lifetime. Cashed in at any time.
Great.
Cashed in.
The second thing, when you go back to the Hells and you speak to your mistress,
Yes.
don't mention that you met me.
He sort of raises an eyebrow. Well, that's an interesting request. Is there a chance that she'd recognize your name? And he flashes sort of a toothy grin.
Not my name, no. But my heritage, maybe. And I just don't want rumors spreading in the Hells just yet.
All right. Well, my lips are sealed. I won't speak a word of it.
Thanks. And I'll reach with my toe and I'll just draw a line through the salt.
Okay. And you watch as his eyes flare with like fire as the salt line is broken, and he says, "I guarantee it. You won't regret this." And the entire chamber that he was in goes up in fire, and when the which even feels hot to you with your tiefling heritage, and when it dissipates, he is gone.
What's Shadow doing?
The shadow, which was pulling towards him the entire time, is now sort of just motionlessly playing out across the floor. And it almost looks as if it's looking up at you. And then as
Like
it...
sad.
Yeah. And then as you watch it, it just sort of shrugs and then relaxes into a position where it's mimicking how you're standing.
I'm gonna shrug
I'm trying
back
to
at
imagine
it.
this.
As it shrugs, I'm gonna shrug back. Sorry, dude.
Yeah, and as you shrug, it shrugs too. Like, it's now perfectly mimicking your motions.
Cute muscle devil, right?
I kind of
Like,
like
Harmony,
it
you've been
now.
working out.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's such a big shadow. Is like, this creature was bold.
super muscular.
Pretty
And
true.
yet it was weak for its kind, supposedly.
Alright, let's go see if they found any treasure, huh?
Yeah, and I think you guys meet up sort of in the main hall outside of
And
the
I'm going
library.
to say to Eli as we walk out, I know that you really look up to Thaddeus and you super respect him, but just please don't tell him what happened.
He rolls his eyes a little bit and says, I look up to him, but that doesn't mean I feel the need to tell him every little thing. If you want me to keep the secret, I will.
Thanks. I'll tell him eventually, just I don't think he'll get it.
And as he says, if you want me to keep a secret, I will, he sort of extends his hand towards your hand, like offering it.
I'll take it. No, he's there, but the screen is black. Zach?
No,
There he is.
There he is.
We're back, I think.
Yeah, I'll take his hand.
And amidst the cold of the Shadowfell, his hand is
Yes,
warm,
sure.
and you can almost feel like his heartbeat through his hand a little bit.
Hands.
And you meet back up with the rest of the group in the main hall area.
Okay, but as we're walking.
Thaddeus looking much worse for the wear.
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna say,
That is-
what are we gonna tell him? We have to come up with a story.
Don't tell Harmony, I fell down that hole.
And then we open the blood up and cry.
The only thing Harmony will hear is that we found a lot of gold.
You're right.
We could tell her the full story after we've said that, and she won't even notice.
Alright. Yep.
So as you meet up together, Eli, and you can see as they come into the room, Eli and Harmony are holding hands. But as Eli sees Thaddeus looking decrepit and
Like on his last legs.
Yeah. Eli rushes forward and says, "Oh my God, what happened? Here, let me take care of that."
Wow, you look awful.
We ran into a bit of residual necrotic energy in the vampire's sanctum.
What were you doing in the vampire sanctum?
Look, I'll show you.
You regain 15 hit points as Eli lays his hands and utters a prayer to Melora.
So I open up the bag of holding and show it to Harmony.
Does it work like that? I thought you like.
No, it doesn't
Yeah,
work like that.
you see a void.
Let's not.
It's like
Nice.
It's like a portal. You have to like reach in and take something out.
Okay, so I reach in and grab a handful of gems. Or the 5 gems. There's 5 gems.
Yeah,
The 5
the
gems.
most beautiful gems you've ever seen. Even in this Shadowfell light, they are deep in color and they glitter in what little light is here.
But I put them back real quick before you can take them.
And then I grabbed the bag. Okay, thank you, Mara.
Those are the prettiest gems I think I've ever seen.
There's money in there too, quite a bit of it.
Harmony. I rolled in gold.
You rolled in gold! Oh, you obviously had so much more fun than we did.
Quite a bit of money in there, actually.
How big was
I'll
the
look at
gold
it.
pile?
It was awesome, but I had to pull it out of Alking's bones.
Ew.
But
Right.
we put holy water on it, so it's nice and sparkly clean now.
Okay. Well, and I can always prestidigitation it if we need to.
I think I took care of that though.
No. I'm ready to leave. I hate the Shadowfell.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go back. Let's.
I think Dice will just notice that you still have the shadow and says no luck with
No.
whatever that was.
No, it was weird. He was like getting pulled towards something, and when we got there, there was nothing.
So this is permanent?
For now.
No.
Oh, and like points at the muscles of the shadow. Like, yeah. Harmony shadow looks great.
But
So-
he's behaving now. Look, I'll do this. Move around to see the shadow.
The moment that I can't wait for is because the wild magic roll says you lose your shadow until you roll this again. So I want you to roll it again, and then your shadow comes back and is like, who's this poser? Beat him up!
You know, we found shadows and I didn't see yours there.
Oh.
The whole gallery of shadows.
Oh.
So we found that room with needles and threads, kind of weird place. Would
Wait, Neil's
they
in
have?
bed?
It was in the gallery.
Wait, can we go there real quick?
So, but
Just-
what I'm asking as a player is, would we have mentioned that in our story, like as he's being healed and stuff?
If you want to,
Well,
it's up
because
to
we're
you.
talking, he just mentioned the room with the shadows. So if you mention there's needle and thread there.
Okay, so I'll describe everything that happened as a funny anecdote while he's being healed, and then I'll mention that to you so that you can.
Wait, can we go to the room with the shadows? I believe you that mine wasn't there, but maybe I can get this thing off of me.
Wouldn't you then not have a shadow?
I don't mind not having a shadow. I lived without a shadow for long enough.
No.
That's
alright.
not different.
If you want, we can try.
But at least the shadow can.
Well, if
Maybe
you guys
go where
if
I
you
don't-
guys want to wait and rest, I know where it is. I can take her.
I'm no tailor. I don't know how to operate these sewing machines.
I don't think any of us do, really.
Oh, I've helped mend sails and that. Come on.
Look,
let's
I
go.
guess.
Let's just go up and take a look.
We're here anyways.
Okay, yeah, Mara, you can lead her directly to where the needles carved with the arcane runes were set onto a table full of other sewing supplies and things like that. There's some mundane thread, and there's like a spinning wheel. There's all kinds of things here.
Is there like a seam ripper with arcane runes on it?
Nope. The only thing that
No,
has
okay.
like magic runes to it seems to be this set of needles.
Okay.
It's just a set of them.
Can I just look around the room and see if there's anything that would look like it could separate a shadow from the person, as opposed to
There's
Attached.
pairs of scissors, but they seem mundane. There's knives and things like that, but again, they seem ornate but mundane.
So can anybody read the runes on the needles?
I mean,
It's,
they're arcane.
yeah, they don't seem to be a language so much as just magic sigils.
Just magics.
Okay. Well,
I'd like to look for Harmony's shadow. Just because I'm killing time.
Okay, roll a perception check.
Sure. Oh, that's great. I rolled a 3, and that's plus something, so
isn't your perception
It's like
really
a-
good?
it's plus 7, I think. So that's 10.
Yeah.
So not very great.
So you take a walk around the room and you reconfirm what Thaddeus had already learned, which was the shadow doesn't seem to be attached to any of these pedestals that are in the room.
Yeah.
you spot one shadow that's of interest to you, in that it seems to be a humanoid, but with like pointed ears coming up off of its head, and then also a bushy tail extending from the back. It just reminds you of there were myths of a race of half spirit, like half humanoid creatures, which sometimes took the forms of animals. It just reminds you of that, but
Alright.
that's what you find.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and take the needles.
Okay. You can write down a pair of, just write down Alkene's needles.
That's not ominous. Alright, well, if I don't see anything that can actually, like, detach shadows from people, then I'm just gonna say, it's alright.
I mean, there has to be something, right?
Yeah, but I walked around, I couldn't find anything here, so
Yeah.
it might just be
Okay.
a spell. We can always ask the next magic person we meet.
They're getting fewer and fewer in the world.
I know.
Maybe we'll run into Ciel again soon. Don't know.
Yeah, I hope so. Anyway, let's get back to Ravenmore, huh?
Yes, please.
That's
Yeah,
enough
let's leave
detours
this
for me.
place.
Okay, well, it was worth a shot. Yeah, and you got a pair of needles out of it. Or a needle.
Alright, so to abstract and expedite things a little bit, you make your way back to the Shadowfell portal without issue, since the fields and fields of zombies and skeletons seem to have dissipated from this area. And you find yourselves at the Shadowfell portal. What is the plan when you're on the other side? Knowing that the city is potentially under the sway of the Eyes of the World.
Well, we have cloaks, don't we? Eyes of the World cloaks. Those might get us to the border.
We do have some. I'm not sure how many.
I have one, I know. You
I
would.
can make 5 of us invisible.
Oh, that's fine. Oh, we also have Mandus.
Oh, and I
have.
can cast seeming.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I have a slot left for seeming. I can make us all look like
Warforged
Warforged.
would be good.
Yeah. Or
Okay.
like anything. Like just normal Ravenmore peasants or
Whatever you want to look like,
I
that
mean-
can be your plan.
yeah, Warforged. Let's do Warforged.
Okay. Before you step through the portal, Mandus sort of gets at the group's attention again and says, I know we just reunited, but once we're through to the other side, I'm going to have to find the orphans. I don't know what your next steps are. What do you intend to do?
I think
have
I'd
to-
like to
I
meet with the
don't-
orphans too to hear about Dawn, to see if Dawn
Yeah.
knows
That's
out.
a good point.
And then return to Redwater.
And then we
Redwater.
have to go back to Redwater.
Drop off Eli and pick
Yeah.
up your friend.
Yeah. How that go?
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then it's off to the Reaches.
All right. Well,
Presumably.
I get the feeling that I'm going to have to leave this place with the orphans if the Eyes of the World are in charge. But once I get the orphans to a safe place, well, perhaps I can try and find a way in your direction, and maybe there's some way I can help you. So just stay in contact. And he sort
And
of
then I'll just
holds
I'll
up
just
the
pull
dagger.
dagger out.
Or
and be
no,
like,
the dagger's up in his mouth.
You always got this.
Well, I have this now too, and I hold up my ruby.
He raises an eyebrow.
I can use it to send you a message once a day.
Well, yeah, that sounds like a great plan. It doesn't sound like I'll be needed around here quite as actively as I was before. So once I'm all rested up and feeling more myself, I'd be happy to see what I can do to help you.
Take as much time as you need.
And you mentioned, sorry, you said something about Dawn being in trouble?
She was leading the orphans out to safety, and well, we know that she's in course.
She was Cora's prisoner, but she seemed to think that they weren't going to hurt her, and they just wanted to bring her back to the capital.
The last I heard, she managed to get in touch with her compatriots, Bree and the rest.
She's gonna try to break out. Right?
Mandus chuckles and he says, well, if she's got word out to Bree, I don't imagine that she'll be in captivity for long. But if I'm not in a position yet to meet up with you, I can at least see what I can do to help Bree and the rest of them liberate Dawn.
That would be
That
great.
much I'd be happy to do.
That would be real great.
You don't have to keep the same human form all the time, do you?
He smiles and says, no, I prefer it, but I can take many shapes.
Then you should have no trouble staying hidden until Bree arrives.
Exactly. Should be no problem. This is the sort of thing I've been trained to do. And there's sort of, you see like a visible twinge as he mentions his training. And he says, I guess now there's no point in concealing it, but part of my monastic training, well, it started under Ixlad. Alkeem wanted me to be a tool for his designs, and so he wanted me to be capable of fighting in dragon and human form, and, well, they succeeded, but in any case, I've strived to use that training for a better purpose since I escaped last time. But I suppose there's no point in hiding it anymore.
You're a better monk than she ever was anyway.
He sort of looks in disbelief and sort of like kind of shrugs it off and says, I don't know about better, but certainly more good.
All right, Warforged it is.
Hmm.
I'm casting.
Okay. I can't remember. What was...
You just look like one. You're not physically one.
Do any of you remember what it was that Alan was up to?
He was gonna sneak back in to see what he could do about Dawn, right? What do your notes say?
Yeah, what do you know say?
He's copious note taker.
I can look through my notes, but it might take me a minute to find anything.
I don't know if we've seen, have we heard from Ellen since?
Yeah, he showed
came
up.
To the,
That's
the,
right.
A lot of battle.
That's right. He was the one we learned about their occupation from, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we sent him back in to kind of see what he could do about getting Dawn and the other orphans.
Friends of
Free.
Great Temple. Dad will send a message to them.
Just like most of my notes for the past couple of sessions are just ah!
Pictures.
Ah! Like lots of exclamation points.
I think you're right. I think he was just going to see if he could figure anything out about rescuing Dawn.
Mhm.
But then he was
How to
probably
rescue
going
her
to
where
go
she's going.
back into the sewers with the orphans, I think.
Right. Yeah.
So, with the cover of seeming, you managed to make it out of the Shadowfell and out of the pyramid that now stands over the portal to the Shadowfell, and into the streets of Ravenloft. You see that the bodies that once decorated the sort of hanging post around here seem to have been taken down, and there's no labor going on around here. In fact, this entire area, this entire district seems to be rather quiet. Nothing seems to be going on here. But as you emerge in Warforged guise, Mandus looks up at the hanging post and says, "That's right, I'm going to have to find his body. I suppose you saw it?"
You knew?
It was what threw me into the rage that made me reckless enough to
To get caught.
get caught.
Yeah, we saw it.
I'm ashamed of how much my emotions got the better of me in that moment, but
It's all over now.
I'll find the body and make sure he gets a good burial. But that's not a task you need to stick around for. Shall we? And he sort of gestures towards the streets where you know there's a gate down to the sewers. And since this entire district seems to be almost deserted, since no one wants to be here right now, you easily enough find your way into a sewer door and down into the tunnels, winding your way back in that direction. And as you do, Mara, you feel a little nip at your heel
I was just
as
gonna
something
say,
bites
I
into your
wanna
leg,
go Pinky.
and you hear the familiar food, 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 food in your head. Hungry.
Come on up. Yay.
You pick him up and sort of place him in your hand, and you can see that his brain is still exposed, so it's clearly Pinky. That was his name, right? Pinky? Yeah, okay. But then as you bend to pick him up, you catch just at the edge of Thaddeus's, like the light from Thaddeus's sword, and the light cast from Hunter's shield, you catch a scurry of movement, as there seem to be several other rats that are now, having seen Pinky being picked up, turning around the other way and dispersing into the sewers. And you think, though it may be a figment of your imagination, that one or two of them might have exposed skull caps.
You've been busy, haven't you, little one?
Food, food, hunger, hunger, please.
Okay, go on in. Help yourself.
Yeah, and he dives into your snack pocket and begins chewing. And you find your way back to the Nexus, which is considerably more empty now. But there seems to be still a couple tents pitched here, and a fire going in the middle. And sat around it seem to be several, maybe up to 20 orphans or so.
I'll cancel the spell once we get under, because I don't want them thinking a bunch of more for sure marching in.
Good plan. Did you check for wild magic?
I did. It did not trigger.
Cool. And as Alan, who seems to be keeping watch at the moment, spots the group of you coming into the tunnels, he runs forward and throws himself onto Mandus, pushing Mandus backwards, actually, in his weakened state, and onto the ground in a big hug. And Alan says, I can't, he looks up at the group of you and he says, I can't believe you actually did it. I knew you were strong, but look, just knowing what you were up against, I was worried. And you can see his eyes are beaming. Like,
We wouldn't have been able to do it without you, kid.
you guys are incredible. And Mandus sort of looks at him and says, yes, they are.
How are things here? Is the air starting to clear up, or is it still kind of icky?
When you emerged, that's a good point. When you emerged from the pyramid and sort of looked up into the sky, you saw, for the first time in several days, the colors of a morning dawn beginning to form on the horizon as sunlight was beginning to filter in.
Good.
Nice.
Good.
And there were
town
no
looks like
signs of shadow dragons in the skies or anything like that.
The town looks like it's clearing out a little bit.
Alan puffs out his chest and says,
For whatever they are.
well, I kept all the orphans safe.
UNT.
We're all here and accounted for. No one's missing. And Mandus sort of like rubs his head, gives him a little nuggie.
Yeah, you did great, Alan.
And then kneels down and says, Alan, we're going to have to get out of here. And Alan says, of course, I knew it. I was already preparing the orphans for your potential return. If you didn't return within a few days, we were going to evacuate as per protocol. And Mandus gives him a raised eyebrow and says, yes, of course. I mean, I knew I could trust you. If anyone was going to follow protocol, it would be you. And he sort of pushes Alan back towards the orphans and says, well, go get everyone ready. We're not staying long. And Alan rushes off to get the orphans, preparing luggage. And once they're all started, he runs back to the group of you, Mandus departing in his place and sort of walking around the orphans and like saying hello to all of them. But Alan runs back and says, I'm sorry, I looked into it. Once we got back established in the city, I tried to find your friend, but I don't think she's here anymore.
It's good news for her. We thought that might be the case, but I didn't think it would happen so soon.
I looked around and there are Warforged stationed now on the walls and things. They've been driving out the remaining UNT and things like that. But I couldn't find any sign of the one you mentioned, the one with the makes tentacle
right.
motions. He's not here, and that makes me think that maybe she's with him.
I would doubt that. Alan, listen.
He
There's one more thing I want you to do.
stands up straight.
Core, the monster, and his warforged came here because they thought that they needed to deal with the situation. They needed to clear out the Anti, defeat the Shadowfell menace, liberate Ravenmoor, as it were.
He nods.
They are going to be going around telling people that they did that.
Oh, I think I see where this is going.
Tell them we did it. Tell them we don't need Orn. Nobody needs Orn.
He nods slowly. We're better at gaining information than spreading it, but I suppose it's worth a shot. Though Amanda seemed to say we weren't staying long. I don't know. We'll see what we can do. I'll make sure that Mandus gives the idea a fair shot.
Alright.
And he sort of looks sad for a second and says, besides, I get the feeling that we're going to have to be back here to locate Tal's body at some point, so I'll see what I can do.
Good.
And his eyes sort of beam again and he says, trust me, there's no one out there in the world as cool as the group of you. And I'm going to make sure everyone who asks knows it.
Thanks, Alan.
He goes, I mean it. You guys, I mean, the two of you, and he looks at Hunter and Harmony, you guys came with Tal and saved me when the Ettercaps had me, and you tried to help me get Ronan back, and then this? You guys are some, well, you're as powerful as any legendary hero that I've ever heard of. That's for sure.
You must not have heard of very strong legendary heroes then.
No, Mandus gives us good history lessons. We know all about her.
Well, thanks. But, you know, you're not half bad yourself. Look at all you did when you're all by yourself. Keeping all these orphans safe, that wasn't easy.
It's true.
It wasn't much. The adults did a lot to protect us.
Yeah, but without you, who knows what would have happened. To them or to us.
He puffs his chest again and says, well, that's true.
So thank you for your help. You're
Alright,
just
well,
as much responsible for saving Mandus as we are.
He just kind of like kicks the dirt a little bit. Not quite sure how to take the compliment, but clearly very proud of himself. And then eventually goes off to pack his own stuff as well. And it's within the hour that the group of orphans is sort of ready to set out. Mandus comes over and sort of gathers the group of you and says, I think that the orphans and I are going to head through the Darkbow Forest on foot up towards Adeus, see if we can cross the border and get to relative safety on the other side. And then I'll come back and try and rendezvous with Bree. It's my understanding that she was headed that direction anyways.
If you make it to Adeus, give my mentor my regards and thank her for her information.
He sort of tilts his head to the side and says, I don't think you've ever spoken to me of a mentor, but if you give me a name, I can see what I can do.
I forget her name offhand, but
I do too. But
I
I think it's Nadine, maybe?
That sounds vaguely right.
Sounds right.
Anyways, he sort of nods and says, I don't know how far into Adeus we'll be going, but I can certainly see what I can do if I ever bump into someone from the Temple of Asanahan by that name. And like I said, stay in contact, because I'll do whatever I can to help. I certainly owe you that.
Of course.
And with that, he sort of begins to get that group ready to pack up, and then what are you guys going to do?
Well, we could spend the night here and teleport to Redwater in the morning.
Sounds good.
Or we can
Eli
start
chimes
on
in and
foot.
says, I gotta say, I'm okay with not walking.
Yeah, let's camp out here for the night.
I think I think that is going to go off and deliver the skull to the Berberlands, which doesn't have to be
On
like
your
a
way
long
back,
scene.
did you, just to remind you what you promised the skull of the Medusa
Yeah.
as well? So are you going to pick that up too?
Yeah.
yeah, you kind of have to take like the whole severed head. There's no way to just get the skull from that.
Right.
But you can deliver those to the Burbalangs easy enough. Why don't you... Would Harmony give him seeming to get him back there?
I can't give him seeming again, but I can make him invisible.
That would do. I mean, I just want to know like how he's getting
How
around
he's
the
getting
temple,
there,
so.
right? Because you need the sneak, right? Yeah, I can make him invisible.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, well then with invisibility, it's not a problem. As you sneak through the rest of the town, you do see life beginning to return to the people, especially now as the city is waking up, as it gets to be a little bit past sunrise now. The sun is now up in the sky. And it's still a sort of cloudy, overcast day because Ravenmoor tends to have that sort of Seattle-like climate where it's frequently rainy. But there are rays of sunshine peeking through the clouds. And it is very clear that the influence of the vampire is fading in this area. And you can see that peasants begin to make their way back about their lives as best as they can. Some people seem to be setting about repairing houses that were damaged, where dragons landed on them and whatnot. So the city is coming to life, and you spot occasionally Warforged patrols walking through the streets, but they're easy enough to avoid with invisibility. You just sort of wait in an alley until they walk by and then dart across. Make your way to the Temple of the Raven Queen. Descend down using the method you know, turning the Raven's Foot Claw.
Wear the stupid paper hat.
Yep. Do you wear the same one, or do you get a different one when
You
you
get a
come
different
down?
one.
Okay. Yeah. When you descend down to the bottom, you see Secret. The mannequin is sitting there atop his pile of junk, and he has a new series of hats. They seem to be these ones are purple paper, and they're folded in a slightly like a more roundish shape. And he says, "The Queen of Ravens humbly requests that you wear this hat at all time." Okay, yeah, you know the drill. Just come back to me if you need me. And you deliver the skulls to the Burbalangs, who sort of creepily swipe them from your hands. And none of them thank you. And they just sort of scurry off down into those tunnels, leaving you alone for a moment.
I think I just want to ask while they're still here. Can
Yes.
I know whose skull this was?
One of them takes the skull in hand, the one who you're speaking with, examines it and says, "Very hard to tell, but extremely ancient.
Well.
This promises to be interesting," and sort of tucks it behind the back.
And I'll leave, and I'm gonna just like leave the bell here, in like not in the sepulchre, but in the big junk pile.
Right, just sort of buried amidst all of the other things.
Yeah.
Seems fitting. And you make your way back up, and the group of you take a long rest.
Yes.
And that's where we'll end today's episode. All right, cool.
Okay.
So that officially, for real, 100%, ends the Alkeen, Shadowfell, Return to Ravenmoor arc of this show. And we will step now into our final arc, where the group of you will venture in the direction of the Elderhaven Reaches and your ultimate destiny in your confrontation against Orin and his lackeys.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I'm in my burgeoning rat army.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that is gonna be a problem in 3 months for this city.
I know.
Ravenmoor just got a new plot hook. If you ever return. So yeah, thank you to anyone who tuned in to watch. We appreciate viewers all the time. This was an awesome roleplay heavy episode, which is a nice break after all the combat.
Yeah.
Hope to see you back again next week as we dive into our last arc. In the meantime, you can catch up with our videos on YouTube. There's quite the backlog. Or also you can explore the history function of our Twitch page, which has the entire story up till now, including details on NPCs and villains and all of that good stuff. So check it out. Come back. We hope to see you back. And we hope you have a good night. Bye.
Bye.
Night.